Hello, folks. Deneen Borelli here with Conservative Review. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have with me today a special guest. His name is Mr. John Faso, and he is the Republican candidate in the 19th Congressional District, and he is running for Congress. Sir, thank you so much for joining the buzz today. Appreciate your time.
Well, Deneen, thank you. And it is since we've spoken last, we won the primary in upstate New York's 19th Congressional District, and that spans the Catskills and Mid-Hudson Valley all the way out to Cooperstown, where the Hall of Fame is. So just to give a little geographic location to your viewers.
That's great. Well, congratulations on your win. If you could just give the viewers, please, a general overview of your campaign.
Well, the overview of the campaign is very simple. America's in crisis. We have a couple of things that I think are urgently demanding our attention and need us to fix. First, it's the economy. We have this slow growth Obama economy, which is killing small business. And in upstate New York, we have the double whammy, not just of Obama, but of Cuomo policies, which are really hurting the small business economy and hurting seniors and retirees and driving young people out of our state. That's the first crisis we face. The second one is the crisis of security. I just learned, and I think we'll just be hearing today, that the person killed in that latest attack in London was an American. And we face a multi-generational struggle with violent Islamic extremism. This is a minor percentage of adherence to Muslims worldwide, but it is still a violent and extremist group that has to be fought and has to be confronted at every turn. And Americans, we're used to this kind of 10-second attention span, Kardashianized, if you will, news media. And the fact is, we've got to get Americans to understand that we may be in a multi-generational fight with this adversary, which wants to destroy us and our way of life in the West. So that's the second crisis we face, is one of security. And third, we face a crisis of what I broadly define as values. We've lost touch, many in America have, with the fact that our Constitution provides us the basis for a strong and thriving and opportunity society. And what I mean by that is we've got to go back to basics: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of enterprise. We've also got to uphold the rule of law, which is enshrined in our Constitution as well, as the basis for a free and tolerant society and a prosperous society economically. So these are the three things that I want to go to Congress to address: the economic crisis, our security crisis, and our values crisis, restoring our basic constitutional framework as the way in which we live and prosper in America. So that's what I'm about, and I really hope that people understand. I want to talk to you a little bit about the race, because it is a very stark contrast between myself and my opponent.
And if you could please tell us about your opponent, what are her characteristics?
Well, my opponent's name is Zephyr Teachout. She's a law professor from New York City who just moved into the district and registered to vote in this upstate New York district in January. She's never voted in a general election in this district. In fact, she says she's a big adherent and supporter of public education, but the very first time she had the opportunity earlier this May, she didn't even vote in her local school board election. So the fact is, she is so left-wing, so radical in her views, as I've been saying. She makes Bernie Sanders look like Sean Hannity, and she is really out there in terms of her views. She wants to she believes the problem with the economy is that Obama didn't go far enough, and she wants to literally amend the First Amendment to give government more control over political speech in our country. I think these radical prescriptions are not what we need, and they're not consistent with our constitutional framework. So this presents a real choice. She's raising money from all over the country from the radical left, the Bernie Sanders supporters. And I really need conservatives and people who have a pragmatic point of view as to how our country should move to be supporting me. And that's why I encourage them to go to johnfaso.com to help me in this effort.
So you mentioned the economy and some of the key issues that are of great concern within your district. I'm sure jobs is on the list as well. If you could just talk about one of the key issues and tell the listeners, the viewers, what you would do to address that issue.
Well, it really comes down to this. 70% of our jobs in our economy, especially in a district like upstate New York, where it's mostly rural, small towns, 70% of the jobs are coming from small business. And the small business economy is being crippled by regulatory overreach, by taxes from both Albany and Washington that is hurting their ability to hire. And I've met with dozens and dozens of small business owners throughout this district, and they're being literally buffeted by higher wage demands from requirements from government. My opponent wants $15 minimum wage nationally. We're already on track in New York State to have a $12.50 minimum wage upstate and $15 downstate. That was done this past year by Governor Cuomo. And small businesses are telling me all the time. I met with a business owner in a tourism industry yesterday out in Cooperstown who told me that he's basically going to lay off and automate servers and wait staff in his restaurant at his tourist attraction because, frankly, he can't afford the minimum wage increases that New York State is mandating on him. So I'd like to see, I think, the approach that the House Republicans are taking in terms of simplifying the tax code is very, very important. There's one provision in particular for small business, allowing them to immediately write off in the current tax year the investments that they might make in machinery and equipment that's necessary to run their business. And then if you have a carryover to carry it over until the following tax years, until you can fully write off that equipment or machinery or vehicles that you might buy for your small business. That's the kind of incentive that grows the economy from the ground up. The left and the Democrats want to have top-down economies where they basically pick winners and losers. They love corporate welfare, and they love to enshrine their favorites in the tax law, and it just makes it more complex. So what we have to do is have tax and regulatory reform, and that's the biggest thing that we can do to improve the small business and job economy in upstate New York and across America.
Now, you mentioned regulatory reform. Now, when it comes to energy, for example, hardworking families, they want affordable, reliable energy. And I understand Governor Cuomo's energy policy. What are the consequences of his policy? I think there was something that was recently approved within your district.
Well, here's this is actually a statewide policy that Cuomo pushed through the supposedly independent Public Service Commission. And basically, he would have the ratepayers throughout the state subsidize the nuclear plants that are up on Lake Ontario because the plants are becoming uneconomic due to the low cost of natural gas and the low demand. And there's a good reason to try to keep these nuclear plants open because they are a source of carbon-free energy. And they also are important employers up there. But typically of Cuomo, they don't really tell the public as to what this actually is going to cost. The New York Post editorialized about this earlier this week. Everything is behind the black box, behind the curtain, and Cuomo never tells you. The other thing he doesn't tell you is that the emphasis on moving to 50% renewable energy by 2030, and this is the core of the Cuomo plan, is that they're going to have to build 1,000 more miles worth of transmission from upstate New York to downstate New York. And our district, the 19th district, would be right in the epicenter of those expanded transmission lines. So again, we need to be leveling with the public as to what the consequences are of these actions. The other thing Governor Cuomo did is he stopped a very critical natural gas pipeline from Pennsylvania up to near Albany, which would have supplied natural gas to all of New York State and New England, but also to local communities along the route that currently don't have natural gas. So it's very important that we balance, we make sure we build these things in an environmentally sensitive way, but we also make sure that we bring affordable energy to businesses and manufacturers and communities that currently now don't have it. Governor Cuomo, unfortunately, stopped that plan. The company is appealing it in the federal courts, and I think they have a decent chance to win. But the bottom line is that cheaper energy means better business climate, a more economical home ownership for people, and that's essential in upstate New York.
And when you mention this natural pipeline, for example, what would that do for jobs in your community?
Well, it really it's twofold. It's the construction jobs that would be created over a 2 to 3 year period, and that was over 1,000 construction jobs. But it's also the property taxes that the line would pay, fully taxable to our school districts and local governments, and that was a big deal. But also there's, for instance, in Sydney, New York, in Delaware County, there's one company, the largest manufacturing firm between Albany and Binghamton, and they have 1,100 employees. They were desperate to get this natural gas at their facility. It's a defense contractor called Amphenol. It's a publicly traded company. And they have a manufacturing plant in Sydney that has been there actually in various ownerships since 1929. And 1,100 people work there, and they were depending upon Governor Cuomo bringing the natural gas supplies to their facility after they had been flooded out a few years ago. And one of the conditions of their staying in New York State was that they get cheaper energy. And now Governor Cuomo has broken his promise on that score.
And if you could tell us, please, what is the general makeup of the voters, Democrat versus Republican? What's the general landscape?
Well, this is a very good question. I hope your viewers will listen to this carefully. The New York 19 is currently represented by my friend Chris Gibson, who is retiring. And New York 19 is basically one of the top 10 swing congressional districts in the entire United States this year. And it is 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 Republican, and 1/3 independent or unaffiliated voters. So it really is a district that could go either way. It's a district that voted twice for President Obama, although the last time by only 5 points. But it's a district that also voted strongly Republican in the state and congressional elections in 2014. So it's a district that really has a propensity to go either way, and because of the political makeup, it's very much a swing district. So I again encourage your viewers and listeners who are interested in helping me win this seat and keeping it in the GOP column to support me at johnfaso.com. It really is very, very critical to us.
And before I let you go, sir, any final thoughts or comments you would like to make?
Well, I think that the critical thing we have to do in our country is we've got to get the economy moving. I've laid out a strong set of proposals to do that, from tax and regulatory relief to property tax reform here in New York State, which is critical for our people. But also we've got to remember that national security is a critical issue going forward, and we're reminded every week that we face a remorseless, tyrannical foe in radical Muslim extremism, and we have to confront it and defeat it. And so if elected to Congress and if honored to serve, growing the economy and making sure we have sound constitutional governance, but also defending this country and its security, those are my top priorities.
All right. Well, Mr. John Faso, Republican candidate, 19th Congressional District in New York, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you again.
Thank you, sir.